conference room on the 52nd floor had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Crystal water glasses lined the mahogany table. Leather chairs worth more than most people's monthly rent surrounded it in perfect symmetry. And sitting at the far end, clutching a crumpled foreclosure notice in her trembling hands, was the woman who had made my childhood a living hell. My stepmother, Diana. She hadn't recognized me when she walked in. None of them had. My father shuffled behind her, looking 20 years older than he should, his one-sprout shoulders now hunched with defeat. My stepbrother, Cameron, the golden child who could do no wrong, stood awkwardly by the door, his designer watch catching the light, probably the last expensive thing he owned. And my stepsister, Brittany, the princess who had tormented me for years, dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, her mascara already running. They had requested this meeting, begged for it, actually. Their house, the house where I had been treated like a servant, where I had slept on a mattress in the basement, while Cameron and Brittany had entire wings to themselves, was about to be taken from them. And they had no idea that the bank holding their mortgage, the institution that would decide their fate, was mine. "Thank you for coming," I said, my voice steady and professional. "Please have a seat." Diana looked up sharply. Something flickered in her eyes, confusion, maybe the faintest spark of recognition, but it died quickly. After all, why would she recognize the stepson she had thrown away like garbage 15 years ago? "We appreciate you taking this meeting," my father said, his voice hoarse. He couldn't meet my eyes. "We know the bank has been. We know we're behind on payments, but there must be something we can work out, some kind of arrangement." I let the silence stretch, let them squirm in their expensive clothes that they probably couldn't afford anymore. "Before we discuss arrangements," I said slowly, "I think we should address something more fundamental." I stood and walked to the window, my back to them. "Do you know who I am?" Cameron snorted. "You're the bank guy. The one who decides if we keep our house or not. That's all that matters." I turned around and smiled, not a warm smile, the kind of smile you give someone when you're about to deliver news that will shatter their world. "My name," I said, "is Marcus Webb." The name hung in the air. For a moment nothing happened. Then Diana's face went white, pure bloodless white, like she had seen a ghost, because in a way she had. "No," she whispered. "No, that's not possible." My father's head snapped up. His eyes went wide, scanning my face, searching for the scrawny, neglected boy he had failed to protect all those years ago. "Marcus," he breathed. "Marcus, is that really you?" I straightened my tie, silk, custom-made, worth more than a month of the allowance I was never given. "Hello, Father, it's been a long time." The room erupted into chaos. Diana started hyperventilating. Brittany dropped her tissue, her mouth hanging open. Cameron looked between me and his mother, trying to process what was happening. And my father, the man who had stood by while his wife treated his only biological son like dirt, began to cry. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why this moment mattered, why it felt like justice finally being served, you need to know everything that came before. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 33 years old, and this is the story of how I went from sleeping on a basement floor to owning an empire, and how the family that threw me away came crawling back. My mother died when I was 6 years old, cancer. Quick and merciless. One day she was reading me bedtime stories, and 6 months later, I was standing at her grave in a suit that was too big for me, holding my father's hand while he sobbed. For 2 years after that, it was just me and Dad. We weren't rich, but we were happy. He worked as an accountant at a mid-sized firm, and we lived in a modest house with a backyard where I learned to throw a baseball. He made pancakes on Saturdays. He helped me with homework. He told me stories about Mom and promised that she was watching over us. Those 2 years were the last time I felt truly loved by my family. When I was 8, my father met Diana at a work conference. She was beautiful, charming, and recently divorced with 2 children of her own, Cameron, who was 10, and Brittany, who was 7. At first, she seemed wonderful. She brought cookies to our house, complimented my drawings, told my father what a sweet boy I was. I was so desperate for a mother figure that I didn't see the warning signs. No one did. They got married 6 months later. Diana and her children moved into our house, and almost overnight, everything changed. The first sign was subtle. Diana started redecorating, which made sense. She wanted to make the house feel like hers. But somehow, redecorating meant removing every trace of my mother. Her photos disappeared from the walls. Her books were boxed up and stored in the garage. Even the curtains she had picked out were replaced. When I asked my father about it, he looked uncomfortable and mumbled something about moving forward and making Diana feel welcome. I was 8. I didn't know how to argue with that. The second sign was how Diana treated me differently when my father wasn't around. In front of him, she was warm and attentive, asking about my day, ruffling my hair affectionately. But the moment he left for work, the mask dropped. "Don't touch that," she would snap when I reached for a snack. "That's for Cameron and Brittany." "Why are you sitting on the good couch? Go sit on the floor. You're tracking dirt everywhere. Clean it up, now." The children learned quickly. Cameron started accidentally breaking my toys and blaming me for it. Brittany would fake tears and claim I had hit her when I hadn't even been in the room. And Diana always believed them. Always. The punishments escalated when I misbehaved, which usually meant existing in a way that inconvenienced Diana. I was sent to my room without dinner. My room, which used to be upstairs next to my father's, was deemed needed for Cameron, who apparently required a bigger space for his video games. I was moved to the basement. The basement was cold, damp, and dark. There was a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling and a mattress on the floor that smelled like mildew. No windows, no heating vent, just concrete walls and the constant drip of a pipe that my father never got around to fixing. I was 9 years old, sleeping in a basement, while my step-siblings lived like royalty upstairs. When I tried to tell my father, Deanna was already there, tears streaming down her face, talking about how difficult I was being, how hard she was trying to blend our families, how I was rejecting her efforts. My father chose her. Every single time, he chose her. "Marcus, you need to try harder," he would say, not meeting my eyes. "Deanna is doing her best. We all need to make sacrifices." Sacrifices. I was the only one making sacrifices. Cameron and Brittany certainly weren't sacrificing anything. They had new clothes every season, the latest gadgets, vacations to Disney World while I stayed home with a babysitter, if Diana even bothered to hire one. Most of the time, I was just left alone. At 9, 10, 11 years old, I would come home from school to an empty house, let myself in with the key hidden under the mat, and fix myself whatever food I could find that Diana hadn't declared off limits. Usually, that meant leftovers. The scraps that Cameron and Brittany had deemed unworthy of their plates. Cold pasta, stale bread, the bruised apples at the bottom of the fruit bowl. I learned to be invisible. I learned that making noise meant drawing attention, and drawing attention meant punishment. I did my homework in silence. I walked softly. I kept my head down and counted the days until I could escape. School became my refuge. It was the one place where Diana's rules didn't apply, where I could exist without fear of stepping on the wrong floorboard or using the wrong dish. I threw myself into studying, not because I was naturally gifted. I had to work for every grade, but I discovered that books could transport me somewhere else, somewhere better. And more importantly, I discovered that education might be my only ticket out. My teachers noticed. While Deanna convinced my father that I was troubled and difficult, my teachers saw a quiet, hardworking kid who turned in perfect assignments and never caused problems. Mrs. Patterson, my 6th grade English teacher, pulled me aside one day. "Marcus," she said gently, "is everything okay at home?" I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to spill every horrible detail about the basement and the leftovers and the way Deanna looked at me like I was something she had stepped in. But I was 12 years old and I was terrified. Terrified that if I told, Diana would find out. Terrified that no one would believe me. Terrified that things would somehow get even worse. "Everything's fine," I said. Mrs. Patterson didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. She just nodded and said, "Well, if you ever need to talk, I'm here." I never took her up on it, but I never forgot her kindness either. The truly cruel part was how Diana maintained her facade in public. At school events, she would show up with my father, smiling broadly, her arm linked through his. She would make a show of checking on me, asking about my grades, telling other parents what a sweet boy I was, and they believed her. Everyone believed her. "You're so lucky," other kids would say. "Your stepmom seems really nice." I learned to just nod. What else could I do? Cameron and Brittany grew more vicious as we got older. Cameron was bigger than me, and he knew it. He would corner me when no one was looking, shoving me against walls, stealing whatever small possessions I had managed to keep. "This is my house," he would hiss. "You're just the leftover from my mom's husband's first wife. You don't belong here." Brittany was crueler in subtler ways. She would accidentally spill juice on my homework. She would tell her friends I was creepy and weird, ensuring that no one at school wanted anything to do with me. She would rearrange my few belongings in the basement, just to let me know she had been there, that nowhere was safe. And through it all, my father did nothing. No, that's not entirely true. He did something. He chose his new family over and over again. He let Diana make decisions about my life without consulting me. He signed permission slips without reading them. He missed my school plays, my science fairs, my 8th grade graduation. "I'm sorry, Marcus," he would say whenever I tried to confront him. "Work has been busy." "I'll make it up to you." He never did. By the time I was 15, I had stopped expecting anything from him. I had stopped expecting anything from anyone, but I had started planning. I knew that I needed money to escape, and I knew that Diana controlled the household finances with an iron fist. She gave Cameron and Brittany generous allowances, but I received nothing. "You have food and a roof over your head," she would say when I asked. "That's more than enough," so I found other ways. I started doing odd jobs around the neighborhood, mowing lawns, walking dogs, helping elderly neighbors with their groceries. I lied about my age and got a job washing dishes at a local restaurant. Every penny I earned went into a hiding spot Diana would never find, a hollowed-out book in the basement, one of my mother's old novels that Diana had discarded. I saved obsessively. I skipped meals at school, pretending I wasn't hungry so I could pocket the lunch money I occasionally received. I wore clothes until they fell apart. I needed every dollar for the plan forming in my mind. The plan was simple: survive until 18, then disappear. I had no delusions about college scholarships or family support. I knew I would be on my own the moment I turned 18, probably sooner, if Diana had her way. So I prepared. I researched emancipation laws. I looked into GED programs in case I needed to leave before graduating. I mapped out cities where I could start fresh, places with low costs of living and job opportunities for someone with nothing but determination. I never told anyone about the plan, not my few acquaintances at school, not Mrs. Patterson, certainly not my father. This was my secret, my lifeline, the only thing that kept me going on the nights when the basement felt like a prison and the cold seeped into my bones. The breaking point came 3 months after my 17th birthday. It was a Tuesday, unremarkable in every way, until I came home from my dishwashing shift to find my father waiting at the kitchen table. Diana stood behind him, her arms crossed, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. "Marcus," my father said, not looking at me. "We need to talk." I knew immediately that something was wrong. My father never initiated conversations with me anymore. We existed in the same house like strangers, passing each other in hallways, exchanging empty pleasantries. "What's going on?" I asked, though I already felt the answer in my gut. Diana stepped forward, her smile widening. "Your father and I have been discussing the future of our family," she said sweetly, "and we've come to a decision." My father cleared his throat. "Marcus, you're almost 18. You're practically an adult, and with Cameron starting college next year, we need to think about finances." I stared at him. "What are you saying?" "We think it would be best," Diana cut in, her voice dripping with false concern, "if you found your own path. You're so independent already, always working those little jobs, keeping to yourself. You don't really need us." The words hit me like a physical blow. But somehow I wasn't surprised. I had been waiting for this moment for years. "You're kicking me out," I said flatly. My father flinched. "It's not like that. We just think." "I'm 17, I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts. "I'm still in high school." "Where am I supposed to go?" Diana shrugged elegantly. "That's for you to figure out. We're giving you a month to make arrangements. That's more than generous." I looked at my father, really looked at him, searching for any trace of the man who had made pancakes on Saturday mornings, who had held my hand at my mother's grave. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Dad," I said, and I hated how my voice cracked. "Dad, please, I'm your son." For one moment, one brief, terrible moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt, maybe, or shame. But then Diana put her hand on his shoulder, and his expression hardened. "You'll be fine, Marcus," he said. "You've always been fine on your own." I left that night. I didn't wait for their month of generous notice. I packed everything I owned into a single duffel bag. It didn't take long, and walked out the door while they were eating dinner. No one tried to stop me. No one called after me. I didn't even hear them pause their conversation. I walked for 2 hours until I reached the bus station. I had $847 saved up, the sum of 3 years of secret labor. I bought a ticket to the city, the farthest destination I could afford, and sat on the bench until the 11 p.m. bus arrived. As the city lights disappeared behind me, I made myself a promise. I would never be powerless again. I would never be at anyone's mercy again. I would build something so big, so untouchable, that no one could ever throw me away like garbage. And someday, I didn't know when or how, I would make them regret everything they had done. The first year on my own was the hardest. I slept in homeless shelters when I could find space, on park benches when I couldn't. I worked every job I could find: fast food, warehouses, cleaning crews, anything that paid cash and didn't ask too many questions about why a 17-year-old wasn't in school. I got my GED 3 months after leaving home. I studied by the light of street lamps, using library books and free online resources. When I passed, I felt a surge of pride that I had never experienced before. No one had helped me. No one had encouraged me. I had done it entirely on my own. But a GED wasn't enough. I knew that if I wanted to truly escape poverty, if I wanted to build the kind of life where no one could ever control me again, I needed more. I needed education. I needed skills. I needed connections. So I enrolled in community college. I worked full-time while taking classes part-time, surviving on 3 hours of sleep and sheer willpower. I chose accounting and finance, partly because numbers had always made sense to me, partly because I understood even then that money was power. My professors noticed my dedication. One of them, Professor Chen, pulled me aside after class one day. He was a gruff man in his 60s who had spent 30 years on Wall Street before retiring to teach. "You work harder than anyone I've ever taught," he said bluntly. "Where do you want to end up?" No one had ever asked me that before. No one had ever assumed I had ambitions beyond survival. "I want to build something," I said slowly. "Something that's mine, something no one can take away." Professor Chen studied me for a long moment, then he nodded. "Come to my office hours. I want to tell you about private equity." That conversation changed my life. Professor Chen became my mentor. He taught me things that weren't in any textbook: how the real world of finance worked, how deals were structured, how fortunes were made and lost. He introduced me to contacts he had maintained from his Wall Street days. He wrote letters of recommendation that opened doors I didn't even know existed. With his help, I transferred to a state university on a full scholarship. I graduated summa cum laude with a double major in finance and economics. I landed an internship at a private equity firm, then a full-time position. I worked 18-hour days, learned everything I could, and made myself indispensable. By 25, I was managing my own fund. By 28, I had made my first 100 million. By 30, I had founded Web Capital, a financial holding company that specialized in acquiring undervalued assets, including banks. Small regional banks, mostly. The kind that served local communities but struggled to compete with larger institutions. I bought them, restructured them, made them profitable, and kept them running. It wasn't the flashiest work in finance, but it was solid, sustainable, and deeply satisfying. Along the way, I acquired First Community Bank, a modest institution that served a dozen towns in the region where I had grown up. I didn't do it for revenge, not consciously. The bank was a good investment, undervalued and ripe for improvement. But when I saw the address of its main branch, when I realized how close it was to the house where I had slept in a basement and eaten scraps, I felt something shift inside me. I kept tabs on my family after that. Not obsessively, just enough to know what was happening. I learned that Cameron had dropped out of college after 2 years, having partied his way through his parents' money without learning anything useful. I learned that Brittany had married rich, divorced richer, and was now living off alimony while complaining about how hard her life was. I learned that my father's career had stagnated, that Diana's spending habits had never changed, that they had refinanced their house multiple times to fund a lifestyle they couldn't afford, and I learned that their mortgage was held by First Community Bank. I didn't interfere. I didn't adjust their rates or flag their account. I simply watched, waited, because I had learned patience in that basement. I had learned that time was the great equalizer, and I knew somehow that our paths would cross again. I just didn't know it would happen like this. The foreclosure notice was sent automatically when they fell 6 months behind on payments. By the time it reached them, they had already been struggling for over a year. Cameron's failed business ventures, Brittany's legal fees from her divorce, Diana's refusal to cut back on anything. When they requested a meeting with the bank's management to discuss their options, the request was forwarded to me. I could have delegated. I could have let my team handle it, never revealing who I was, letting them face the consequences of their choices without knowing that the boy they had thrown away now held their fate. But I didn't. Maybe it was petty. Maybe it was pride. Maybe after 15 years, I simply needed them to see who I had become. So I scheduled the meeting myself. I put on my best suit, and I walked into that conference room knowing exactly what was about to happen, which brings us back to the present. Diana was hyperventilating. Brittany had collapsed into a chair, her face a mask of disbelief. Cameron was backing toward the door, looking like he wanted to run, and my father was crying, tears streaming down his face, his hands reaching toward me as if trying to bridge 15 years of absence. "Marcus," he said, his voice breaking. "Marcus, I'm so sorry, I didn't know, I didn't realize what?" I asked calmly. That I would survive, that I would succeed, that throwing me away wouldn't be the end of my story. He flinched at each word. Please, you're still my son. I know I made mistakes, but mistakes. I let the word hang in the air. You call watching your wife abuse your child for 9 years a mistake. Deanna's head snapped up. I never abused him. I treated him like one of my own. The rage that erupted in my chest was volcanic, but I contained it. I had learned control in those years on my own. I had learned that power came from composure, not explosions. You made me sleep in a basement, I said quietly, on a mattress that smelled like mold. You fed me scraps. You took away every trace of my mother. You turned my father against me, isolated me from everyone, and then threw me out onto the street when I was 17 years old. I turned to my step-siblings. You tormented me for years, broke my belongings, spread lies about me. Made sure I had no friends, no allies, no one to turn to, then back to my father. And you watched all of it, and you did nothing. The silence that followed was absolute. No one tried to defend themselves. What could they say? Every word I spoke was true, and they knew it. Finally, Diana found her voice. It was smaller now, stripped of its usual sweetness. What do you want from us? I almost laughed. Want from you? I don't want anything from you. I haven't wanted anything from you since I was a child foolish enough to
यार
believe my
हेड क्यों नहीं
father
जा
might
रहा?
protect me. Then
हेड
why
चले
are we
जा.
here? Cameron demanded, some of his old arrogance returning. Why this meeting? Why the big reveal? You could have just foreclosed without us ever knowing. I considered the question. It was valid. Why had I chosen this path? Because I wanted you to know, I said finally. I wanted you to understand exactly who you threw away. I wanted you to sit in this room and realize that the boy you treated like garbage built all of this. I gestured at the office, the building, the empire surrounding us. I wanted you to feel, just once, what it's like to be powerless.
हैं?
Brittany started
No.
crying ugly, genuine sobs that shook her entire body. We'll lose everything. The house, our belongings, everything. Where are we supposed to go? I felt nothing. Maybe I should have felt satisfaction or triumph, but there was only emptiness.
दोनों को
These
डैमेज
people had
दिया.
loomed so large in my memories, but looking at them now, they just seemed small, pathetic, broken by their own choices. That's for you to figure out, I said, echoing Diana's words from 15 years ago. I'm sure you'll be fine on your own. Diana's face contorted with fury. You can't do this. After everything we did for you, everything you did for me, I repeated incredulously. You gave me 9 years of misery. You gave me trauma that took years of therapy to address. You gave me nightmares that still wake me up sometimes. I leaned forward, my voice dropping, and you gave me a chip on my shoulder that drove me to build everything you see around you, so I suppose I should thank you. Without your cruelty, I might never have found this strength. My father stumbled forward, falling to his knees in front of me. Marcus, please, I'm begging you. I know I failed you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm still your father. Doesn't that mean anything? I looked down at him, this broken man who had once been my whole world, the man who made pancakes, the man who told me stories about my mother, the man who, somewhere along the way, had chosen comfort over courage and let his son suffer for it. It meant everything once, I said quietly. When I was a child who needed you, it meant everything. But you made your choice. You chose her over me, over and over again, until there was nothing left of the boy who loved you. I straightened my jacket and walked toward the door. My assistant will discuss your options with you. There are programs for first-time foreclosures,
यार ये
resources for
नो
housing
बड़ा.
assistance. We're not unreasonable. I paused at the threshold, but the decision about your home has already been made. You have 30 days to vacate. Diana screamed then, a sound of pure, unfiltered rage that echoed off the conference room walls. You ungrateful monster. After everything I sacrificed, you owe me, you owe all of us. I turned back one last time. I owe you nothing. I never did, and now, finally, you have nothing over me. I walked out without another word. The weeks that followed were strange. I expected to feel victorious, vindicated, complete. Instead, I felt hollow. I had spent so many years imagining this moment. The confrontation, the revelation, the looks on their faces when they realized what I had become. I had rehearsed speeches in my head, cataloged grievances, nursed old wounds until they became part of my identity, and now it was over. And I didn't know who I was supposed to be without that anger driving me. My therapist, yes, I have a therapist, one of the smartest investments I ever made, helped me work through it. Revenge isn't closure, she said gently. Seeing them suffer won't heal what they did to you. Only you can do that. She was right, of course, she usually is. I started focusing on other things, my company, my employees, the communities served by my banks. I established a scholarship fund for kids aging out of foster care, ensuring they had the educational opportunities I had to fight for. I created a foundation that provided emergency housing for families facing foreclosure, because while I couldn't save myself at 17, maybe I could save others. I started rebuilding a life that wasn't defined by my trauma. I made friends, real friends, not just business connections. I started dating, though that's still a work in progress. I adopted a dog, a scruffy mutt from the shelter who had been overlooked by everyone else. We understood each other. And slowly, gradually, the hollow feeling began to fill. My family followed through on the foreclosure, though it didn't go the way I expected. My father called me 2 weeks after our meeting, not to beg or rage, but to talk. "I know you don't owe me anything," he said, his voice tired but steady. "I just wanted you to know that I've been thinking about everything, about all the ways I failed you." He paused. "Deanna and I are separating. It's been coming for a long time. Losing the house just accelerated things. I didn't know what to say. I had prepared myself for anger, for manipulation, for every possible approach except honesty. I'm not asking for forgiveness," he continued. "I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, and I'm sorry, truly, deeply sorry." I let the silence stretch. Then I said, "I can't forget what happened. I can't pretend it didn't shape who I am. I know, but..." I hesitated, unsure if I was making a mistake. "But I'm willing to talk, occasionally, if you can accept that things will never be what they should have been." I heard him exhale, a shaky, relieved breath. "I can accept that. Thank you, Marcus, thank you." It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't reconciliation, but it was something, a tiny crack in the wall I had built, just big enough to let in a sliver of light. Diana, Cameron, and Brittany I never spoke to again. They moved away after losing the house, Cameron to chase some new scheme, Brittany to find a new wealthy husband, Diana to wherever bitter people go when their empires crumble. I didn't track them. I didn't care. They had taken up enough space in my head for one lifetime. 3 years have passed since that confrontation. I'm 36 now. Web Capital has grown into something I never imagined, a diversified financial services company with thousands of employees and billions in assets. But more importantly, I've grown. I still struggle sometimes. There are nights when the old nightmares return, when I wake up cold and afraid, certain I'm back in that basement. There are moments when success feels unreal, when I'm certain someone is about to take it all away. But those moments are fewer now. And in between them, there is joy. I got married last year. Her name is Alina, and she is the most remarkable person I've ever known. She came from hardship too, not the same as mine, but enough that we understand each other in ways words can't capture. When I told her my full story, she didn't pity me or rage on my behalf. She just held my hand and said, "Thank you for trusting me with that. Now let me tell you mine." We built something together that neither of us had as children, a home. A real one filled with warmth and safety, and the kind of love I had stopped believing in. Last month, I visited my mother's grave for the first time in 20 years. I had avoided it for so long, afraid of the memories, afraid of the pain. But Alina came with me, and somehow that made it bearable. I stood before the headstone and told my mother everything, about the years after she died, about Diana, about the basement, about being thrown away and clawing my way back, about building an empire from nothing. And about finding happiness anyway. "I survived, Mom," I whispered. "I know you would have protected me if you could, but I learned to protect myself, and I found someone who protects me now." The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment, just a moment, I could almost hear her voice. The same voice that had read me bedtime stories, that had told me I could be anything I wanted to be. "Proud of you, sweetheart, always." I wiped my eyes and took Alina's hand. "Ready to go?" She smiled. "Whenever you are." We walked back to the car together, leaving the cemetery behind, but not leaving my mother. She would always be with me, her memory a light in the darkness that Diana had never managed to extinguish. My father and I meet for lunch once a month now. It's still awkward sometimes. There are topics we avoid, wounds that will never fully heal. But there's something there, not the relationship we should have had, but something new, something we're building from scratch. Last week, he showed me a photo he had found while cleaning out his storage unit. It was from when I was 5 years old, before Mom got sick. The three of us at the beach, sun-kissed and laughing, sand in our hair. "I kept it hidden," he said quietly. "Diana wanted to throw it away, but I couldn't. I couldn't let go of who we used to be." I looked at that photo, at my mother's smile, at my father's arm around her, at the little boy who had no idea what was coming, and I felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. "Keep it," I said. "It's a good memory." He nodded, his eyes glistening. "The best." We finished our lunch and went our separate ways. But for the first time, saying goodbye didn't feel like a wall going up. It felt like a door staying open. I still think about that conference room sometimes, about Diana's scream and Cameron's fear and Brittany's tears. About my father on his knees, begging for something I couldn't give. I used to think that was the climax of my story, the moment everything led to, the revenge I had dreamed about for 15 years. But I understand now that the real climax came later. It came when I stopped defining myself by their cruelty, when I stopped seeking validation in their downfall, when I realized that the best revenge wasn't making them suffer, it was refusing to let them matter. The best revenge was living well, building joy, creating love. The best revenge was becoming the person I was always meant to be, despite everything they did to stop me. Alina and I are expecting our first child, a boy. We've been discussing names, debating nursery colors, reading parenting books that terrify me in the best way. I'm scared. Of course I'm scared. What if I fail him the way my father failed me? What if I don't know how to be the parent he deserves? But then Alina takes my hand and reminds me of something important. I'm not my father. I never was. And the fact that I'm worried about being a good parent probably means I'm already on the right track. You survived the worst, she says, and you came out kind. That's not nothing, Marcus. That's everything. She's right, she usually is. Sometimes, late at night, I stand in our half-finished nursery and imagine the life my son will have, the bedtime stories I'll read him, the pancakes I'll make on Saturday mornings. The games we'll play in the backyard of our home, our real home, filled with warmth and laughter and absolutely no basements. He will never sleep on a cold floor. He will never eat scraps. He will never wonder if he's loved, because I will tell him every single day. And if he ever faces hardship, because life is hard and pain is inevitable, he will know that he is not alone. He will know that his father will stand beside him, fight for him, protect him with everything he has, because that's what parents are supposed to do. That's what my mother did for as long as she could. That's what I will do for as long as I live. The cycle of pain stops here, with me, with Alina, with the family we're building from the ashes of the ones we were born into. That's the real story, not revenge, not wealth, not power. Just a boy who survived, became a man who thrived, and finally learned that the truest victory is refusing to become the monster others wanted him to be. I am Marcus Webb. I was thrown away, overlooked, abandoned. And I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. Last week, a young analyst at my company asked me how I built all of this. He was ambitious, hardworking, trying to find his way just like I once was. I thought for a moment before answering. Find your reason to survive, I told him. Something deeper than money or success or proving anyone wrong. Find the thing that keeps you going when everything falls apart, and then protect it, nurture it, let it grow until it becomes your foundation. He nodded, scribbling notes. What was your reason? I smiled, thinking of my mother's voice, of Professor Chen's guidance, of Alina's hand in mine, of the child we were about to bring into the world. At first it was spite, I admitted, pure spite. The need to prove that they were wrong about me. And now, I looked out my office window at the city spread before me, the city where I had once slept on benches, where I had fought for every opportunity, where I had built something from nothing. Now it's love, I said. Love for the life I've created. Love for the person I've become. Love for everyone who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. The analyst left, looking thoughtful. I hope he finds his path, whatever it is. Because that's the other thing I've learned. Success means nothing if you don't pass it on. The knowledge, the opportunities, the simple belief that someone can be more than their circumstances. These things matter. They matter more than any fortune. Professor Chen did it for me, Mrs. Patterson tried even when I was too scared to let her. My mother did it for as long as she had. Now it's my turn. Tonight I'm going home to Alina. We'll eat dinner together, talk about our days, discuss names for our son. Maybe we'll watch a movie or read in comfortable silence or just sit together, grateful for the peace we've found. Tomorrow, I'll go back to work. I'll make decisions that affect thousands of people. I'll navigate challenges and opportunities and the endless complexity of running a company. But I'll do it differently than I once would have, not driven by anger, not fueled by spite, driven by purpose, fueled by love, because the boy who slept in a basement finally found his way home. And home, it turns out, was never a place, it was a feeling. A person, a choice. It was refusing to let the darkness win, and it was here all along, waiting for me to claim it. This is my story, not of revenge, though there was revenge, not of wealth, though there was wealth, but of transformation, of survival, of becoming. Of rising from the ashes of a childhood that tried to destroy me and building something beautiful from the ruins. If you're out there, reading this, living your own version of the basement, hear me. It gets better, not easily, not quickly, but it gets better. Find your Professor Chen. Find your Alina, find the thing that keeps you going when nothing else will. And never, ever let them convince you that you're nothing. Because you're not, you're everything, you just don't know it yet. One day you'll look back at this moment, the pain, the fear, the isolation, and you'll realize it was forging you into someone stronger than you ever imagined. One day they'll see who you really are. Be patient, and when your moment comes, be ready, because you deserve it. You've always deserved it, and your story isn't over yet.